The galaxy had been at war for years, and hope seemed like a distant memory. In every corner of the universe, entire civilizations had fallen. The Xalgar, a ruthless alien species, had come from beyond the stars, their technology far beyond anything the galaxy's inhabitants could match. Planets once filled with life now lay in ruins, their populations wiped out or enslaved. The destruction was so vast that even the most powerful alliances could not stop the unstoppable force that was the Xalgar Empire. On a small forgotten world in the Outer Rim, there was a last hope, a planet named Iridia. Iridia was not known for its military power or great wealth. It was a peaceful world, home to a simple but proud people. However, when the Xalgar reached it, Iridia became the last stronghold for the survivors of countless star systems. In the heart of the planet's capital city, a small group of leaders and warriors gathered in the final bastion of resistance. The city's walls were strong, but the people inside had no illusion of victory. The Xalgar had already broken through most of the planet's defenses. Their ships hovered ominously above the planet, ready to strike at any moment. The resistance fighters had already lost many battles. Most of their best warriors had fallen. And the survivors? They were tired, weary, and hopeless. In a dimly lit room, Commander Lyra Duver paced back and forth. Her eyes were tired from endless battles, but there was a fire still burning deep within her. She had seen the destruction of her homeworld, her people, and her friends. Yet, as the leader of the last resistance group, she knew it was not over. Not yet. "You're not giving up, are you?" a voice asked from behind her. Lyra turned to see Jarek, a young technician who had joined the resistance when his family was killed. His face was pale from exhaustion, but there was still determination in his eyes. He was one of the few survivors who hadn't given up on the dream of defeating the Xalgar. "No," Lyra said, her voice steady, though it carried the weight of all the battles she had fought. "I can't. Not while there's a chance. We've lost so much, Jarek, but there's still a chance." Jarek nodded, though his own doubts were clear. "What do we do, Commander?" "The Xalgar have control of nearly everything. We've heard of the other planets falling, and now they're here. What can we do?" Lyra walked toward a table where a holographic map of the galaxy was displayed. Red dots marked the locations of Xalgar-controlled systems, while tiny green ones showed the few pockets of resistance left. It was a bleak sight. The galaxy was dying, one system at a time. "We don't give up," she said, her voice filled with purpose. "We can't. We may be outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed, but we still have something the Xalgar don't." Jarek raised an eyebrow, unsure of what she meant. "Hope," Lyra continued. "We still have the strength of spirit, and as long as we have that, we can keep fighting." Just as her words filled the room, a voice echoed through the communication system, a voice familiar to all who had fought in the war. "Commander Lyra Duver, this is Captain Vorn of the Alliance Fleet. We've received a transmission from an unknown source. It's a distress call, but not from any of our worlds." Lyra's heart raced. "Where's it from?" she asked urgently. "It's from Earth," Captain Vorn's voice crackled through the comms. "They're asking for us to hold on. They say humanity is coming." Lyra stared at the screen, unsure of what to think. Humanity. Earth. She had heard stories of humans, of their resilience and incredible ability to adapt in the face of adversity, but she had never thought they would come to the aid of a galaxy so far from home. Was it possible? Is it real? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Captain Vorn's voice crackled again. "It seems so. We're analyzing the signal now. It's difficult to explain, but there is no mistake. They're coming, and they want us to hold the line." Lyra stood silent for a moment, her mind racing. Could humanity really be their salvation? Could this small distant species that had never known the horrors of this war come to their rescue? "Hold the line," Lyra repeated, the weight of the words sinking in. She turned to the others in the room. "We're not done yet. Humanity is coming. We'll fight until they arrive. And when they do, we'll show them that we're not ready to give up." The room filled with a renewed sense of energy. The resistance had been battered, but now, for the first time in what felt like forever, they had something to hold on to. Hope had returned. Out in the galaxy, amidst the endless void, humanity was coming. The galaxy's fate was about to change. Back on Earth, the message from the galaxy had spread like wildfire. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a plea, a desperate request for salvation from the galaxy's last hope. The moment the signal was received, Earth's leaders and scientists scrambled to understand it. The message was clear but mysterious. Humanity, come. The galaxy is dying. The Xalgar are unstoppable. But we have hope, and we need your help. Captain Annawell stood in front of a large display screen in the command center of Earth's United Defense Fleet. Her uniform was spotless, her face serious, but her mind was racing. She had led human forces in numerous battles, but this was unlike anything she had ever faced. The Xalgar were not a simple enemy. They were a force unlike any other in the galaxy. Yet the call was undeniable. She turned to her team of officers, all of them equally puzzled by the situation. "We've been studying the signal for hours," Captain Wells said, her voice firm yet calm. "It's genuine. This isn't a trap. It's a plea from a dying galaxy." Lieutenant Theo Park, a brilliant communications officer, nodded in agreement. "There's no mistake, Captain. The technology used to send this message is advanced enough to reach across light years of space. It's a cry for help." A sudden silence filled the room. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Why Earth? Why humanity? What could they possibly offer that the galaxy's great civilizations hadn't already tried? "We have one shot at this," Captain Wells continued, her tone sharp. "We don't have the resources or the numbers to fight a war on such a large scale, but we have something else. We have ingenuity, adaptability, and determination. We're not just survivors, we're problem solvers." Her words carried weight, and for a moment, the officers in the room felt a spark of hope. Earth had always faced impossible odds, whether it was battling disease, natural disasters, or even alien threats. But each time, humanity had adapted and prevailed. This time would be no different. At that moment, Dr. Julian Carter, one of Earth's foremost scientists and engineers, stepped forward. His face was lined with worry, but his eyes shone with the excitement of a new challenge. He was the kind of person who thrived in difficult situations. "Captain," he said, his voice steady, "I believe we can make this work. If we pool all our resources, we can build a fleet that can get us there." "Get us where?" Captain Wells asked, curious. "To the galaxy in need," Dr. Carter said, a faint smile crossing his lips. "We've got the technology. Our ships may not be as advanced as the Xalgars, but we're humans. We'll figure it out." The team immediately set to work, putting together everything they had. The clock was ticking. In a matter of days, the Earth's greatest minds and warriors had come together, designing and constructing a fleet of ships capable of intergalactic travel. The project was far from easy. Engineers worked around the clock, facing one setback after another. There were times when it felt like they might not make it in time. But there was something about the urgency of the mission, something about the people they were fighting for, that made them push forward. The thought of the millions already lost and the billions still at risk drove them. They couldn't fail. Not now. As Earth's first fleet of rescue ships was ready for launch, Captain Wells stood at the helm of the lead vessel, the Hopebringer. She felt a deep sense of responsibility, but also something else, an overwhelming sense of determination. Humanity was about to take its first steps into the unknown, and the stakes had never been higher. "This is it," she said to her crew, who had gathered around. "We're not just answering a call for help. We're doing what humans do best. We're fighting for what's right. We're going to help them hold the line. We're going to show the galaxy that Earth is a force to be reckoned with." The crew cheered, their spirits lifted by her words. They knew what lay ahead would be dangerous, but they also knew that they were humanity's last chance. The first ship lifted off, followed by dozens of others, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind. As the ships entered the vastness of space, Captain Wells watched the stars ahead. The journey would take weeks, but there was no turning back. The galaxy's fate rested on their shoulders. Meanwhile, on Iridia, Commander Lyra Duver stared at the sky, waiting for the help she had been promised. She knew that Salgar wouldn't give up easily, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope. Earth had answered. Humanity was coming, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could turn the tide of this war. The vastness of space stretched out before them as Captain Anna Wells and her crew aboard the Hopebringer raced toward Iridia. It had been days since they left Earth, and still, the journey felt like it had just begun. But the mission they were on wasn't like any other. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a last chance for a dying galaxy, and every moment counted. The fleet of human ships, though small compared to the Salgar's immense armada, moved with purpose. Each ship was a testament to human ingenuity. They were not the most advanced or the fastest, but they had something unique: the determination to survive. The people aboard these ships knew they had only one opportunity to make a difference, and they weren't about to waste it. Captain Wells sat in the command chair, her fingers resting lightly on the controls as she glanced out of the window. Space seemed infinite, but she knew the journey would end soon. Iridia, the last stronghold, was now within reach. As the fleet drew closer, her thoughts kept returning to the message they had received, a cry for help from a world on the brink of destruction. "Captain, we're nearing Iridia's system," said Lieutenant Theo Park, who was monitoring the ship's progress. "We should arrive within the hour." "Good," Captain Wells replied. "Prepare for entry into Iridia's orbit. We need to be ready for anything." For the past few days, Captain Wells had prepared her crew for what was coming. They were going into a war zone, a place where the enemy had already established control. No one knew exactly what to expect when they arrived. The Salgar were ruthless and unpredictable. Even with their own fleet of ships, humanity was outnumbered and outgunned. But they had something that Salgar didn't: unity. The Hopebringer's crew worked like a well-oiled machine. Every officer knew their role and performed it with precision. Dr. Carter, the brilliant scientist who had designed many of their ship's systems, was busy running tests on the advanced shields they had developed for the journey. The hope was that these shields would give them a fighting chance against the Salgar's superior weapons. "I'm confident these shields will hold up under fire," Dr. Carter said, looking over his data. "They're not invincible, but they should give us the time we need to strike back." "That's all we need," Captain Wells said, her voice steady. "Time to get to Iridia and help the resistance." Meanwhile, on Iridia, Commander Lyra Duver stood at the observation deck of the city's last remaining stronghold, gazing up at the sky. The Salgar had not yet attacked, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. The resistance had done everything they could to hold their ground, but the walls of the city were thin, and their forces were dwindling. She had tried not to let herself hope, but the message from Earth had been a game-changer. Humanity was coming. The fleet was on its way. But was it enough? Was there enough time to hold the line? "Commander," a voice said, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Sergeant Alun, one of her most trusted officers. "The fleet from Earth is approaching. Should we prepare to make contact?" Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "Yes. Let's establish communication immediately. We need to know exactly when they'll be here." Minutes later, a holographic communication link was established between the Hopebringer and the resistance base. Captain Wells appeared on the screen, her face serious but filled with determination. "This is Captain Anna Wells of the United Defense Fleet," she said. "We've received your call, Commander Duver. We're here to help. Our ships will be in your orbit shortly. How can we assist you?" Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she kept her composure. Captain Wells, we're running out of time. The Xalgar are preparing to launch a full-scale assault. We need reinforcements, and we need them now. Captain Wells nodded. We're not here to waste any time. We're going to hold the line until we can make a full strike. We've got a plan in place to fight back, but we'll need your resistance forces to coordinate with us. Lyra felt a renewed sense of hope. The Xalgar may have been a nearly unstoppable force, but humanity's spirit was undeniable. Understood. We'll prepare for your arrival. As the communication ended, Lyra turned to her officers. Gather the troops. We're not alone anymore. We have a chance. Back on the Hopebringer, Captain Wells stood tall, watching the planet Iridia grow larger on the view screen. She could feel the weight of the moment. The galaxy was depending on them, and this would be their first real test. Prepare for landing, Captain Wells ordered, her voice filled with resolve. Let's make sure this message of hope isn't just a dream. We're going to show the Xalgar what humanity can do. As the fleet descended toward Iridia's atmosphere, Captain Wells couldn't help but think about Earth's place in the galaxy. Humanity had always faced seemingly impossible odds, but every time, they found a way to rise above. Now, they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. They were fighting for the galaxy's future. The battle for Iridia was about to begin, and humanity was ready to make its stand. The skies over Iridia were dark, filled with swirling clouds that mirrored the tension in the hearts of those who stood ready to fight. The resistance had gathered their forces at the city's stronghold, but even with their combined efforts, they knew they were outnumbered. The Xalgar were ruthless, and their massive fleet hovered just outside the planet's atmosphere, waiting for the right moment to strike. On the surface, Commander Lyra Devere stood in front of the makeshift command center, looking out at the horizon. The weight of the situation was heavy on her shoulders, but for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. Humanity had arrived, and with them, the promise of a new beginning. Commander, Sergeant Ellen said, walking up to her, the Earth fleet is in position. They're preparing to launch their first strike. Lyra turned toward the small group of officers gathered around the command table. The room was filled with the low hum of communication devices, and the faces of those around her were a mix of determination and anxiety. There was no turning back now. The time had come to fight. Let's make sure we coordinate with them, Lyra said, her voice firm. We'll give them everything we've got. The Xalgar won't know what hit them. Above the planet, Captain Anna Wells stood in the bridge of the Hopebringer, watching the planet below. Iridia was just within her reach, and she knew that this was only the beginning. The fate of the galaxy rested on their success, but the mission was clear. Destroy the Xalgar's command ship and cripple their forces. We're in position, Captain, Lieutenant Theo Park said, his eyes scanning the screens in front of him. The resistance has already initiated their defenses. We'll be joining them in just a few minutes. Good, Captain Wells replied. We'll strike fast, strike hard, and make sure the Xalgar know they've made a mistake underestimating humanity. The crew was silent, each member focused on the task ahead. They had prepared for this moment for weeks. The Hopebringer had been outfitted with the latest weaponry and technology, designed specifically to give humanity an edge against the Xalgar. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They had everything to lose. Captain, Dr. Carter said, entering the bridge, I've made some adjustments to the shields. They should hold up against the Xalgar's weapons for a little longer. Good. I'll need every advantage we can get, Captain Wells said. She glanced at the crew, her eyes meeting each of theirs. This is it. We've fought for this moment, and now we're going to fight for Iridia. For all of us. The Xalgar fleet, massive and imposing, hung in space like a dark shadow. Their ships were built for destruction, with weapons capable of decimating entire planets. From the command ship, General Khazar watched the human fleet approach, his expression cold and calculating. He had seen many enemies fall before the might of the Xalgar, and he didn't expect this battle to be any different. You think they can stop us? One of his officers asked, his voice filled with doubt. General Khazar's eyes narrowed as he studied the incoming ships. They are nothing. A handful of ships, no match for the power of the Salgar. He turned to his communications officer. Prepare to engage. We will crush them quickly. Back on the surface of Iridia, Lyra's pulse quickened as she watched the battle unfold in real time. The Earth fleet had arrived, and the sky above the planet was now filled with bright flashes of light as weapons fired from both sides. The sounds of explosions echoed through the atmosphere as ships on both sides engaged in fierce combat. "Commander, we've made contact with the human fleet," a communications officer called out. "They're engaging the Salgar head-on." Lyra's heart raced as she looked at the battle happening in the distance. The Earth ships were holding their ground, using their advanced weapons to strike at the Salgar ships. The Salgar retaliated, their firepower overwhelming, but the human ships were moving quickly, dodging and striking back with precision. "They're doing it," Lyra whispered to herself, watching as the human fleet pushed forward. She turned to her officers. "Get the ground forces ready. It's time for us to join the fight." The battle raged on above and below Iridia, each side fighting with everything they had. The Salgar were relentless, but humanity's resilience shone through. The Earth ships used tactics that the Salgar had not anticipated: quick strikes, feints, and coordinated attacks. They were small, but they were fierce. Captain Wells barked orders to her crew, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Keep those shields up. Focus on the Salgar's command ship. That's the key to ending this." The Hopebringer fired its weapons at the Salgar fleet, each shot hitting its mark with deadly accuracy. The Salgar ships began to falter, their coordination slipping as the human fleet continued its assault. "We've got them on the run," Lieutenant Park shouted, his voice filled with excitement. But just as the Salgar seemed to be faltering, their command ship retaliated with devastating force. The Hopebringer shook violently as the Salgar's powerful weapons hit the shields. "Shields are holding," Dr. Carter yelled. "But we can't take many more hits like that." "We don't need many more hits," Captain Wells said, her voice grim. "We just need to finish this." Lyra stood at the command center on Iridia, watching as the humans continued to push forward. The ground forces were preparing to launch their own strike, but the Salgar were closing in. She knew they couldn't hold out much longer without the support of the human fleet. "They're doing it," Lyra whispered. "They're actually doing it." The resistance fighters cheered as the Earth ships continued their assault. The Salgar were finally feeling the pressure, and humanity had proven that it could make a difference. Iridia might not be lost after all. The battle about Iridia raged on, the sky lit up with bright flashes of light as the human fleet clashed with the Salgar forces. The Hopebringer, despite taking heavy damage, remained in the thick of the fight, refusing to retreat. The Earth ships moved swiftly, dodging the Salgar's devastating firepower and striking back with unrelenting force. Humanity had come to fight for Iridia, and they weren't going to back down. On the surface, Commander Lyra DeVere watched the battle unfold through the command center's large screen. She stood still, her eyes never leaving the images of the ships in the sky. Her mind raced with calculations and strategies. She had never seen a battle like this before. The odds were still against them, but there was a sense of hope now, something she hadn't felt in a long time. The humans had brought with them not just their technology, but their will to fight. "Commander, the human fleet has hit the Salgar's main vessel," an officer called out. "It's taking heavy damage, but they're still retaliating. The humans are holding their ground." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had seen the Salgar's power firsthand, and to hear that they were struggling was a glimmer of hope. It was the opening they needed. "Prepare our forces," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the urgency in the air. "It's time to strike. If we move fast, we can catch them off guard." Above, in the heart of the battle, Captain Anna Wells gripped the controls of the Hopebringer, her eyes fixed on the massive Salgar command ship. It was still firing relentlessly at them, but she could see cracks forming in its defenses. Every hit from the human fleet had taken a toll. She knew this was their best chance to bring the fight to an end. "Lieutenant Park, prepare a full assault on the Salger's command ship," she ordered. "Give them everything we've got." "Aye, Captain," Park replied, his fingers flying over the control panels. Targeting systems locked in. Full power to the weapons. The Hopebringer shuddered as it took another hit, but Captain Wells didn't flinch. She had seen her crew fight through worse. They were strong, and they were determined. "Captain, we're receiving a message from the Resistance," Dr. Carter called out, her voice full of excitement. "They're moving in. The ground forces are ready to launch their attack." A sense of relief washed over Wells. The humans weren't just fighting from the skies. They were fighting on the ground too. The Resistance had been preparing for this moment, and now they were ready to strike. "Tell them to move out," Captain Wells said. "We'll keep the Salger distracted in the sky. They need to hit them hard." On Iridia's surface, Lyra stood in front of her team, watching as the first wave of Resistance fighters readied their weapons. The humans had provided them with advanced armor and weaponry, and Lyra could see the determination in their eyes. They knew what was at stake. It wasn't just their survival. It was the survival of their entire world. "Remember," Lyra said to her team, her voice calm but filled with purpose, "we strike fast and hard. We can't give them a chance to regroup. The humans are doing their part. Now it's our turn." The fighters nodded, their faces set in grim determination. They had already lost so much to the Salger, but now they had a chance to fight back. They had a chance to win. Lyra turned to the rest of the group. "Let's go." As the first wave of Resistance forces charged forward, the human fleet above them continued its assault on the Salger's command ship. The air was filled with the sound of weapons fire, explosions, and the hum of engines as the two sides collided in a fierce, chaotic battle. In the skies, Captain Wells led her fleet forward, her focus unshakable. They had taken a beating, but they had also given one back. The Salger's massive command ship was slowly crumbling under the pressure, its shields flickering as more and more strikes hit their mark. "We're getting close," Lieutenant Park said, his voice tight with anticipation. "The Salger are losing their defenses. We can take them down now." Captain Wells nodded. "Now or never," she muttered. "Everyone, focus your fire on the command ship. We end this now." The fleet launched a final, coordinated attack, their weapons lighting up the sky. The Salger command ship's defenses faltered, and with one final blow, the ship exploded in a brilliant flash, sending debris scattering across space. The Salger fleet began to retreat, their will broken. On the ground, Lyra and her forces pushed forward, the Resistance fighters moving through the wreckage of fallen Salger ships. They were met with fierce opposition, but they fought with a resolve that was unmatched. The humans had shown them that it was possible to defeat the Salger, and now they were fighting with everything they had. Lyra's heart raced as they neared the enemy's main stronghold. The final push was coming. They couldn't stop now. The humans had shown them the way, and they couldn't let their sacrifices be in vain. In space, the battle was all but over. The Salger fleet was in full retreat, their forces scattered and broken. The human fleet had emerged victorious, and Iridia's skies were no longer filled with enemy ships. It was over. The humans had done what many thought impossible. They had fought the Salger and won. As the smoke cleared on Iridia's surface, Lyra stood among her team, looking up at the sky. The battle had been won, but the war was not over. There was still much to rebuild, but for the first time in years, she felt a true sense of hope. Humanity had answered the call, and they had proven that even in the darkest of times, hope could still shine through. The sun began to set over Iridia, casting a soft, golden light over the battlefield. The sounds of war had faded, replaced by a quiet, almost eerie stillness. The skies, once filled with the smoke and fire of battle, were now calm. The last of the Salger ships had retreated, and the humans' victory was complete. But as the dust settled, the true weight of what had been achieved started to sink in. Iridia had been freed, but it had also been shattered. The once thriving cities were now nothing more than ruins. The ground was scarred, and the landscape forever altered by the war. There was much work to be done, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope. Commander Lyra Duvere stood atop a ridge, her eyes scanning the horizon. She was exhausted, her body bruised and tired from the long battle, but her heart was filled with a sense of gratitude and purpose. They had won, but there was no time to rest. The rebuilding had already begun. She could hear the hum of machinery in the distance. Human engineers had arrived to help, ready to assist in restoring Iridia to its former glory. Lyra wasn't alone. Standing next to her was Captain Anna Wells, the leader of the human fleet. She had been on the front lines alongside her crew, fighting with everything she had to protect Iridia. They had formed an unlikely but powerful bond throughout the battle, and now they stood together, looking at the future that awaited them. "How does it feel?" Lyra asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. Anna smiled, though her eyes were tired. "It feels like the beginning of something new. We've fought hard, and now we get to build. We get to make sure this world stays safe." Lyra nodded. "But we're not done yet, are we?" "No," Anna replied. "There's still much to do. The war is over, but the peace is just beginning. We can help rebuild this world, but we also need to make sure it stays strong. The Xalgar might retreat for now, but they won't forget the fight. And neither should we." Lyra's gaze softened as she thought about Anna's words. It was true. The Xalgar were powerful, and though they had won this battle, the universe was vast. There would always be new threats, new challenges. But with the help of their new human allies, Lyra believed they could face anything. On the ground, the resistance fighters, now joined by human soldiers, worked tirelessly to clear the wreckage and rescue those who had been trapped in the rubble. They had won, but there were still lives to save, and the rebuilding was only just beginning. Dr. Carter, who had played a crucial role in strategizing and keeping the humans' medical resources flowing, moved among the injured, providing care where she could. Her medical team had treated hundreds, but she knew there was still much work to do. Every life mattered, and she would do whatever it took to ensure that Iridia's people had a chance to heal. The humans had brought with them advanced medical equipment, technology that could help speed up the recovery process. Yet, for all the technology in the world, it was the people, both human and Iridian, who had made the difference. The strength of their unity, the courage in the face of fear, had been what had truly tipped the scales. Back in the sky, the Hopebringer hovered above the ruins of Iridia's capital city. The damage was visible even from the stars. Burnt-out buildings, collapsed structures, and the remnants of what had once been a thriving civilization. But now, the human fleet had settled into a new role, helping to protect and rebuild. Captain Wells surveyed the scene from her ship's bridge. She had spent years in space, leading her crew through countless missions, but this one felt different. Iridia was no longer just another world they had helped to defend. It had become a symbol of the strength that humanity could offer to others in their darkest hour. "We're not just a fleet anymore," Captain Wells said to her crew, her voice steady. "We're part of something bigger. We've saved a world, and now we get to help it rebuild. Let's make sure that we do it right." Her crew responded with a chorus of agreement. They had fought hard for this victory, but they knew their work wasn't over. The Hopebringer and the other human ships would stay to assist, not just as defenders, but as partners in rebuilding a new world. As the night fell over Iridia, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. The war had ended, but the true test was just beginning. Iridia was forever changed, and so were the people who lived there. But Lyra knew one thing for certain. They had not fought this battle alone. The humans had shown them what it meant to be strong, to be resilient, and most importantly, to fight for a future worth living. Lyra stood tall, her eyes on the horizon, where the first signs of a new day were starting to appear. There was still much to rebuild, but for the first time in years, she felt like Iridia had a chance. And with the help of their new allies, she knew they would take that chance. Together, they would rebuild, stronger than before. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. The sun rose slowly over Iridia, its light casting long shadows over the land. It was the beginning of a new day, a new era. The once war-torn world was now full of hope, as the people who had once fought side by side with humans began to rebuild their homes and cities. Lyra Duver stood by the edge of a newly rebuilt building, her eyes watching the workers below. Iridians and humans, united in their mission, worked together to restore their world. They were not just fixing buildings, they were rebuilding their future. Lyra could feel the weight of this moment. After all the years of struggle, after the loss and the pain, this was the chance they had longed for. The humans had shown them how to stand tall in the face of darkness, how to keep moving forward even when all seemed lost. With their help, Iridia was not just surviving, it was thriving. Lyra turned as she heard footsteps behind her. It was Captain Anna Wells, her closest ally. Anna's eyes were tired, but there was a determination in them that Lyra knew all too well. The battle had been fierce, but the war was over, and now the work of peace and rebuilding had begun. "We've done it," Anna said, her voice filled with both pride and relief. "Iridia is going to be okay." Lyra smiled, but her thoughts went to the future. The war was over, yes, but the universe was still vast. There would be challenges ahead and new dangers, but with humanity by their side, Lyra had no doubt that they could face whatever came next. "There's still so much to do," Lyra replied, "but I believe we can do it together." Anna nodded. "We've shown them what humanity can do when we come together. Now we show them how we build." The next few months were filled with challenges, but they were also filled with progress. The Iridians had learned a lot from the humans, not just in combat, but in resilience and hope. They had never seen a species fight with such passion for the lives of others. Humans didn't just fight for their own survival, they fought for others too. And that had made all the difference. Dr. Carter, who had been on the front lines during the battle, continued to lead the medical efforts on the ground. Her team of human and Iridian doctors worked around the clock, healing the wounded and providing care to those in need. They had seen the worst of what war could do, but now they were witnessing the power of recovery. "They're strong," Dr. Carter said one evening, standing beside Lyra as they watched a group of workers clearing rubble. "I didn't think they would recover so quickly." Lyra smiled softly. "They've always been strong. They just needed a little help remembering it." Meanwhile, in the skies above Iridia, the Hopebringer and the other human ships remained stationed in orbit. Captain Wells and her crew continued to monitor the situation, ensuring the safety of Iridia as it recovered. But they were also there to learn. The human fleet was now a symbol of hope, not just a military force. "We're no longer just soldiers," Captain Wells said, looking out the window of her ship. "We're part of this world now. We've earned their trust." Her crew nodded in agreement. "And we'll protect that trust with everything we have," one of them said. Anna smiled, a feeling of pride swelling in her chest. She knew they had done something extraordinary, not just in battle, but in forging a bond that would last a lifetime. They had shown Iridia that there was more to life than war, more to the universe than fighting. There was peace, there was cooperation, and there was a future worth fighting for. As time passed, the people of Iridia began to rebuild not just their cities, but their way of life. They welcomed the new knowledge the humans brought with them. New technologies, new methods of farming, and new ideas for cooperation. The world was changing, but it was changing for the better. Lyra stood on the steps of the new Iridian government building, watching the citizens gather for a ceremony. It was a day of remembrance for those lost in the war, but it was also a day of hope. She looked up to see the human flag flying beside the Iridian one. The two flags waved in the breeze, side by side, symbols of the new alliance between their peoples. "We will remember the sacrifice of those who fought," Lyra said, her voice steady. "But we will also remember the strength we found in each other. This is our future, and it will be a future of peace." Captain Wells stood beside her, nodding in agreement. "Together, we've shown the universe that we are stronger than any enemy. We are stronger together." As the ceremony continued, Lyra felt a sense of peace she had not known before. The war had taken so much from them, but it had also given them something incredible. A chance to rebuild not just their world, but their bonds with each other. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And as the stars above began to shine once more, Lyra knew one thing: no matter what came next, humanity would always stand by their side. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united by a common goal. A goal of peace, of hope, and of a future worth fighting for.